Thank you for joining for another episode of the Medutu Effect. It's Matthew Lay. Kind of want to do a recap of the previous ritual. Don't worry, we're going to release the whole thing in its brutal entirety. Probably closer to Halloween when we get everything put together. Now, the reason we're doing this is because in putting everything together, if we put it in the past episode, we're going to have to chop it up into a 28-minute segment. I know we are allowed 30 minutes, but we only put 28 minutes of footage together. This went on for days. Well, actually longer than that, for almost a month and a half. So let's cover the why. Why would we do something like this? The biggest reason is practitioners in general. We do specific things, but we have no valid measurements of energy levels or anything along those lines. So in doing this, we can combine the two different worlds of P.A.S.T and the magical application and put research behind what's going on. So our objective is to measure energy levels, look for EVPs, which we found, measure time distortions, look for weather patterns, things like that. All these different avenues we were measuring, and in some ways we were successful. In some ways we need to learn a different way of measuring. So let's start with the personal experiences. Now, there was, while we were setting up that night, there was a lot of setup beforehand, but that particular night, we were setting up, aside from the coyotes going nuts in the area, a huge murder of crows comes flying over and lands in the circle and or around it, and also while Corey and myself were inside the circle setting up the new device, which I'll kind of cover, but we don't know what to name it yet. Any suggestions? Open. A huge hawk kept flying over. Because of its size, it was confusing to us, but it turns out it's called ghost hawk or something along those lines. Anyway, it's not like it's an unusual occurrence. It's the fact that it was just circling over the top of us, yelling at us. So probably a mice was nearby and we didn't see it. So what did we do for testing? So we had these clamps. Corey came up with this idea about setting up these clamps just on the edge of the circle with K2 meters. We lined the outside of the circle, 36-foot diameter, with a wire, a 24 gauge enamel-coated wire that circled back around and hooked to an oscilloscope. Now this oscilloscope initially was working perfectly. We were able to measure time distortions with a steady heartbeat of the area. We turned on the new device, which I will cover, and we were actually able to measure the difference in the area. Now, what happened beyond that, and huge props out to Steve and Chris and Corey for getting this wire, because I don't know if you know what a 24 gauge wire looks like, but it's pretty thin, and they trenched it around the entire perimeter of the circle. Now, it was a huge group effort. So what happened is when the ritual began, there was a pop in the south quarter and the wire broke. We weren't able to get the readings we wanted. So we have to come up with a better system with that. And we have to look at some other things with the K2s. Is that the right tool? Because they never got any fluctuations. So around the whole perimeter we had IP cameras set up for audio and video. All this was remotely managed. We had limited manpower outside the circle. Now, with that being said, they had all the tech outside the circle, minus the primary device in the center. Because traditionally, we don't bring watches, cell phones, things like that, inside of the circle. So, keeping with traditions, we didn't do that. Maybe it's time to look at those traditions. I don't know. I'm still a traditionalist in some aspects, so I have a hard time accepting that. But outside the circle, originally we were supposed to have 6 people set up to monitor and to manage the Wi-Fi cameras, everything. Luckily, I designed a repeater system for the IP cameras because of where the trailer had to sit versus where we were actually at, and it worked very well. But normally somebody has to man it in case we lose connection to one of the IP cameras. So we also understand real life, the real world, this physical world gets in the way. And so next year we'll be planning to do this on October 31st. We'll meet together on May 5th. And so if you're a practitioner, and no matter where you're at, and you're interested in participating, send me a message on the Facebook page and let's discuss. Because the more people that are involved, now that we have a baseline, the better in this case. We need 4 people for the quarters, which Tammy, Jenny, Jared, Allison did an amazing job. They are amazing individuals and very open-minded, and that's a key point. You have to be open-minded when you're approaching this. Now, on the investigator side, Corey and Steve handled it very well. They came up with a game plan on how they were going to do it. But because there was only 2 of them, we were limited on how much equipment they can carry because they're carrying cameras as well. So we need a minimum of 4 more investigators to be able to handle a decent rotation of equipment, monitoring, everything else. So wherever you're at, come and find us. We don't have a location set yet. It will be here in Saskatchewan. Don't hit me up and say we've got a great place and, somewhere in the States or whatever else. We want to do it here. Now, the personal experiences. We had a scribe inside the circle, and because we don't bring technology inside the circle, she sat on the ground, wrapped up in a blanket because it was cold that night, and she recorded with a pen and paper everything she saw. Now, she saw anything from shadow figures swirling around inside the circle. She noted the weather pattern changes. She noted how we were swaying in accordance to the circulation of the circle. Hearing chimes in the background. These are personal experiences that are priceless to us, but we need to, we want to measure. We don't need it. As practitioners, we don't need these things because these are things that we know that work. They've worked for centuries. So let's bring it to this century and test it and make it better. So the other personal experiences, like I mentioned about the animals and whatnot, but when we started the ritual, the animals went quiet. Just absolutely silent. There was no, it was like somebody turned a switch. Now the weather pattern, keep in mind, this is Saskatchewan. When we started, beforehand, it was just cold. But when we started, the wind started picking up. We had a freak snow that started to come in. The snow pattern actually, which was kind of cool, normally being from the south, I would be a little upset that it's snowing on me while I'm in the middle of nowhere. But it was neat because it was almost like we could use the snow as a measuring tool. Now, where does that come into play? The circle pattern goes into a spiral. It's a spiral of energy as well, not just emotion, but it's energy. It's a representation. Everything we do is a representation of something else. So when we're walking in these spirals and creating the circle, when the snow kicked in, it actually followed the path of how it spiraled. Now, the only reason we know this is when the cameras were on this side, we could see the snow going this way. On this side, the snow going this way. Now, outside the circle, the snow was flowing in a steady pattern because we had a camera set way in the distance pointing in. Now, so inside the circle, we actually got a measurement of the snow pattern following the energy flow. Once again, all this will be released together so you can review for yourself. Now, the device in the center is basically, in layman terms, and I use that loosely, is a particle accelerator. It's a series of magnets, 75-pound pull magnets that are gapped. The design is based off of the P.A.S.T staff. Curious? Look up the P.A.S.T staff. There's a lot of theories about what it's actually used for. Now, it was actually done by accident, but is there truly an accident when it comes to stuff like this? So there are Tesla coils, and the way the induction works inside of it is designed to drive a 2-foot, very thin rod into the ground as an antenna array that spreads out across the ground. And the device itself is about 2 feet high and has what I nickname fingers that come off the top of it. Now, this device pulls the natural magnetic energy, which we'd already measured with the tri-field, and magnifies it. To accelerate it, it is 1 million volts DC on a series of inductions. And it does emit a radio frequency. It does emit a strong magnetic field. So all this was measured with tri-field. Now, my concern is, as we all know, EMF is harmful. So a 50 to 60 hertz range can actually interrupt the theta and the beta waves of the brain. So we were concerned, I was concerned when I was making it, would we just be hallucinating in the circle because of this device? So I actually measured the frequency range on that. So it is perfectly safe. So with all this that went on, we've got EVPs, weather pattern changes. Oh yeah, how can I forget? When we quit, the weather pattern stopped immediately. It's not like it just tapered off. It's like, once again, like the animals, flip of a switch. We could see every star, no clouds. The wind was calm. It was still cold, but the wind was calm. So, we got to also find a way to start measuring, put weather stations up, so we can also have a this is what's coming type thing. We want to get those measurements as well. So weather stations would be essential going forward. So once again, going forward, if you want to participate in this, hit me up on the Facebook page on the Meditu Effect. Send me a message and let's discuss it, because I think this opens up a whole realm of possibilities. So it was amazing. Everybody involved. There was a lot of prep. So henceforth, we'll meet on May 5th and of next year, and we'll plan on October 31st. It's a long process to prepare. So it was truly amazing. A 25-minute ritual, to us, it felt like literally 5 minutes. It's actually documented on film. Everybody thought we had literally just started. And Steve noticed that it was a total of 25 minutes, almost 30 minutes really, of actual ritual time. So we'll put all the footage together, get it all released, and because there's a lot of prep time, we did some interviews, various discussions, and get it all together so that everybody can see it, review it for yourself, make your own decisions, and ask more questions, because that's what we're doing right now. We meet in 2 weeks, and we will discuss what is the after effects, what's been happening in our lives that correlate to it, any interesting dreams, any different views, different energy levels in our personal lives. So this is going to be good. Stay tuned, and thank you for watching another episode of the Medusa Effect.